Many of us enter the spiritual journey with the hopes of gaining something by the end of it. However, the deeper you go into this journey, the more you start becoming aware of the many layers inside of us. Your thoughts, your beliefs, your preconceptions, your habits, your fears, your expectations, your desires. At some point, you realize that this journey isn't so much about finding something new about yourself. It's about rediscovering something that was always there. It's about finding a way to strip away the layers of illusion so that you can see it more clearly. In other words, this journey isn't so much about learning something as it is about unlearning old patterns of seeing yourself and the world. This is the reason why some people call the dark night of the soul the great disillusionment. A disillusionment essentially means a dismantling of the illusions that many of us carry around with us. See, many of us start this journey with high hopes and ideas, but what we're going to get out of the experience. For some of us, that might come in the form of a fantastic illusion about enlightenment and awakening, about a final state of being that looks like a heavenly place full of love and light and joy and bliss. For others, these illusions might be much more self-directed. For instance, we might see ourselves as these spiritually adept seekers who feel a little bit more special than others because we've had a glimpse into some consciousness expanding experience that others just don't seem to understand. It's this subtle sense of ego inflation that can turn into a very sneaky form of spiritual ego. If you stay long enough on this journey, you might get a bit of a shock. It might come in the form of realizing that spiritual life isn't what you dreamt it would be like. Or maybe it's discovering that the level of attainment that you imagined that you had isn't as advanced as you thought it was. For some, there may be a rude awakening when we go through trauma of some kind, say the loss of a loved one or a job, and we realize that our spiritual practice and development isn't as robust and as deep as we thought it was, and it throws us into a pit of despair. This experience of the dark night of the soul, this disillusionment, isn't a bad thing. It's a necessary and inevitable part of the journey as a process of dismantling the stronghold that the ego has over us. Many of us mentally understand that reality is an illusion that our minds create, but it's much more different to experience it. The shock of having so many of our illusions shattered and feeling fundamentally ungrounded in life, perhaps even abandoned by the divine, can be so intense that it sends us into a dark night of the soul, looking for answers and a way out of the empty void of confusion that we find ourselves in. As painful and uncomfortable as this experience may be, it's a necessary part of the process because we need to feel disillusioned first so that we can let go of the identification with the ego. For us to be able to ascend toward our higher self, we need to be able to descend into our inner abyss to create more space within ourselves. The pain that we feel when we're going through a dark night of the soul is the shedding of the illusionary layers that the ego creates to protect itself. These defenses seem to be almost grafted onto the soul and prevents us from understanding reality in a more profound way. That's why you can see the dark night of the soul as a humiliation in the original sense of the word. It's a humbling process. It's a surrendering of our ego into the great mystery, into God, or whatever your name for it is. You go through this journey and make a few discoveries and start believing that you understand everything until you're broken out of that illusionary spell again. That's why Socrates claimed that the more he knew, the more he realized he knew nothing, or why religions have teachings on the holy fool. From the foolishness of Christ to the Mullah and Nasruddin stories in Islam. Even the Tarot's major arcana starts with the Fool's card and calls the cycle the Fool's journey. The funny thing about the ego is that it can be quite sneaky. Even after finding out about all this, it can still try to find ways to reinforce its sense of separation by being more spiritual or more wise or even more humble. But this is just another trap. That's why the pain of the dark night of the soul is so important. It not only helps us remove the illusionary layers around the ego self, but that same pain invites us inwards to go exploring our depths and shadows, which most of us avoid. Most of us are not motivated enough to go exploring our hidden shadows if we only focused on the bright side of existence and didn't experience any pain. That's why we created the Dark Night of the Soul and Shadow Work Journal to complement each other. You can find links to those resources in the description. Many of us are sincere seekers, trying to find freedom and peace in this life. But if the confrontation with the ego that is necessary in this journey is too much to handle during certain stages of your life, that's okay too. If and when it does happen, it may not seem like it, but consider yourself fortunate to be disillusioned so many times, because it means that you're not stuck as a prisoner of an illusionary way of relating to yourself, others, and life. Khalil Gibran, the poet, writes, "Your pain is the breaking of the shell that encloses your understanding." Disillusionment is like making cracks in the shell that the ego has created, and our job then becomes to look for the rays of light that are coming in through those cracks, because that's the way out. Thanks for watching, and if you like this video, let me know in the comments what your experience is with the disillusionment of the Dark Night of the Soul. And if you haven't done so already, feel free to subscribe. I'll see you next time.